Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 21st of July of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to continue with the massive drone and missile strike that took place during the previous night between the 20th and the 21st of July of 2025. We have already discussed this map. This map was published this morning, and once again here we can see missile and drone strikes that took place during the previous 24 hours. As you can see, the Russians attacked the city of Kiev, the Russians attacked the city of Ivano-Frankivsk and the city of Kharkiv, so the western part, the central part and the eastern part of Ukraine. Later we got additional details from the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, and they stated that the Russians used 450 targets in total, both missiles and drones. The Ukrainians are saying that they managed to destroy every single missile that the Russians launched, both cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. Furthermore, the Ukrainians are saying that they managed to destroy up to 95% of drones. So the Russians, according to them, probably hit just several targets and that's it. But once again, when talking about the real situation on the ground, when talking about pictures, videos that we got during the previous 24 hours, we can see completely different picture that the Minister of Defense of Ukraine provided us. For example, this video published from Kiev, and here we can see the consequences of Russian attack. And as you can see, some buildings and facilities, most likely military facilities, were destroyed by the Russians. The sources reported that here we can see how the Russians destroyed the military facilities that Ukrainians used to produce drones that Ukrainians could use deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation. Here we can see once again the city of Kiev, but from another angle, the same story. We can see smoke screen, we can see the consequences of the previous night attack. Another important thing that I would like to point to attention is the report that was published by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, and they gave us very interesting updates about this attack. The Russians are saying that last night the armed force of the Russian Federation carried out a group strike with long-range air, ground and sea-based high-precision weapons, including Kinzhal air ballistic hypersonic missiles, as well as attack with drones against enterprises of the Ukrainian defense industry and military airfields. And next paragraph is very important. 3 Patriot anti-aircraft missile launchers and 1 US-made and AIM MKQ-65 multi-role radar were neutralized. So the Russians are saying that as a result of this attack that took place during the previous night, they managed to destroy 3 Patriot air defense launching systems, which is very expensive toys in hands of Ukraine. Some sources are saying that the total cost, the total damage the Russians managed to deal is more than $1 billion just during the one night. So as for now, of course, the Ukrainians haven't confirmed this information. Once again, the Ukrainians said that they destroyed everything. Another important detail that I would like to point to attention. Once again, let's return to this first video that we have already seen. Here, once again, we can see the consequences of attack, and today several sources reported that this is the building, this is the facility that was visited the last week by the special envoy of the President Trump, Keith Kellogg. If you remember, last week he was in Kiev and he had meetings with the Ukrainian authorities, and the most important, Keith Kellogg visited several factories, several facilities that Ukrainians used to produce drones. And the Russians are saying that today these facilities, all those facilities, were damaged and destroyed. Very interesting situations. For now, of course, we can't confirm this information as well, but if this information is correct, then most likely the President of the United States of America needs to start searching for a rat in his inner circle, because somebody provided this information most likely to the Russians, and the Russians use this information very fast, as we can see. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. We have additional updates, and first let's continue with the Sumy direction, where the Ukrainians continue their counter-offensive operation. As we discussed some changes in the previous video, we continue adjusting the map. Today the Ukrainian sources published this video where we can see how Russians were counter-attacking already the northern part of the settlement of Kondrativka. And based on this video, we have adjusted the most northeastern part of the settlement. Once again, I would like to remind you that Ukrainians began their counter-offensive operations several days ago, and as a result of clashes during the previous days, the Ukrainians managed to improve their position significantly. The Ukrainians obviously suffer huge losses because the Russians are bombing the settlement with FABs, with aviation. Almost the entire village was already reduced to ruins, but this situation didn't stop the Ukrainians. They continue offensive. And now we see that the Russian Ukrainians were about to secure the village completely, and the Russians launched their own counter-offensive from the northeastern part with the purpose to restore control and maybe to cut and cauldron the Ukrainians who are currently located in the central and the northeastern part of the village. So once again, it's very difficult to understand what is happening on the territory of Kondrativka. We believe that pro-Ukrainian sources made a very, very probably correct thing to color the entire village as a gray zone, so it's better to wait for additional day or two and to understand then what is happening. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. We will not discuss the situation in the Kupiansk directions or the Sivas direction because we haven't received anything special. The most interesting updates are coming from the Pokrovsk and the Konstantinovka area. And first let's talk about the city of Konstantinovka. Once again, I would like to remind you that yesterday the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes the Russians secured the village of Belaya Gora. And based on this report, yesterday most of the mappers adjusted their maps in this area in Russian favor. And today we got video where we can see how several Russian soldiers were entering the western part of the settlement, probably the edge positions along the line of combat contact. And based on this video, we haven't adjusted anything because we adjusted everything yesterday, but this is very important video because first of all, this is a proof that the Russians control the entire settlement and that currently the clashes are taking place for the settlement of Alexandra Shultine. So now the Russians are tasked to move further in the northwestern direction, and the current task of the armored force of the Russian Federation is to take under complete control everything along this red line. So if the Russians are able to do this, then the Russians will be able to create complete encirclement for the Ukrainians who are currently located in the southwestern part of the Kliban-Byksky pocket. We are talking about this territory. As you can see, the Russians managed to tighten this pocket from the east and from the west along the entire line from the south to the north. Furthermore, as we can see, the Russians have already established complete FPV drone control and fire control over this pocket. The Ukrainians are trying to bring additional forces in to stabilize the situation, but everything that enters this territory probably destroyed by the Russians within probably days or hours or even minutes. So the situation is very complicated for the Ukrainians, and most likely this line is going to collapse very soon, most likely right after the Russians secured the village of Alexandra Shultine. As for the N32 road, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special. The Russians are pushing Ukraine positions, trying to establish complete control over the settlements of Novoekonomichne, Fedorovka, Boykovka, Novotoretskaya, Poltavka, Rusin Yar. The Ukrainians counter-attack, trying to restore or to stabilize the situation. So we don't receive a lot of updates from this area, but we need to remember always that this is the area of a major battle between the Ukrainians and the Russians, and everything will be resolved exactly in this pocket. Who wins the major battle with the minimal losses is going to win the entire battle for the Donbas Arc operation. We're talking about the territory between the cities of Pokrovsk and the cities of Slaviansk. So as for now, nothing, so let's wait for additional another 24 hours. At the same time, we receive updates from the southwestern part of the city of Pokrovsk. During the previous video, we discussed that the Russians are able to infiltrate deep inside of the territory of the city of Pokrovsk, that the Russians' sabotage and reconnaissance group were spotted and discovered already in the vicinity of the southern citadel of the city of Pokrovsk. Most likely this entire territory is more a gray zone than the territory under complete Ukraine control, and we are talking about three villages: the village of Zvirova, the village of Lyantovichi, and the village of Troyandna. So there are very heavy clashes clashes, and today we got some changes on the ground in the most southwestern part of this pocket. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 20th of July of 2025. The Russians managed to improve their positions in the vicinity of Zverova, and by the end of the 21st of July, the Russians secured the territory to the north of the settlement of Shevchenka, and the Russians managed to improve their positions around this mine and this elevation. So this is the video, and in this video we can see a Russian soldier that was moving towards the city of Pokrovsk. Maybe this is the soldier of a sabotage and reconnaissance group that managed to enter deep inside of the city itself. So he is moving without any problems, without any resistance from Ukrainian side. This episode was discovered exactly in this point. Based on this video, we adjusted a part of the settlement of Zverova, and obviously according to this video, the Russian soldier was moving further along Sazonova Street in the northeastern direction, so which means that most likely this part of the settlement of Zverova is either in the gray zone or under complete Russian control. We are talking about this territory. We are waiting that during the next several days we are going to receive additional geolocations, and this entire territory would be colored in the Russian favor. And this is very important. As for this part of the special military operation and the battle for the city of Pokrovsk itself, the most important is to take under control the mine of Shevchenka. This is a strategical elevation in this area. If Russians can establish control over this territory, the Ukrainians most likely would be forced to fall back deep inside of the city of Pokrovsk itself, and the Russians by this control would tighten the news around the most important supply lines that still go in the direction of the city of Pokrovsk. So the situation remains tense, as we can see, and the initiative is completely in Russians' hands. As for the South Donetsk direction, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received lots of updates. The Russians continue their offensive. The Russians are bombing and attacking a number of settlements in this area with the purpose to prepare them before the beginning of assault operations. But as for now, as we can see, no changes. The same story is taking place in the Zaporozhye direction. The Russians are bombing and attacking the city of Orekhov. The Russians attack Ukrainian positions with FPV drones in the vicinity of Malish, Sherbaki and Kamenskaya, preparing for the roads of attacks that most likely is going to happen near future. Furthermore, the most important that this at the end of this week, most likely on the 24th or 25th of July, we're going to see a third round of talks between the President of Ukraine and the President of the Russian Federation, between the delegations of Ukraine and delegation of the Russian Federation, which is going to take place in Istanbul, which means that right before 1 or 2 days before these talks, we're going to see significant number of changes on the ground. The Russians will attack, the Ukrainians will attack deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation with missiles. As for now, we see that both sides, the Russians and the Ukrainians, are trying to accumulate as many as possible forces before these talks, before this third round of talks. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.